Don't you, like February 1? Is it after that?
Sure. So five, what would that be, 5.2 then?
Oh,
Were you coming out just after the island plan, or?
that was just an info item, so. go for it. Hi, Christie. Hi.
Hello, Christy. Welcome. We've just begun.
Oh, gosh.
Well, we could do it at 1.2.
Oh, thanks. Do you have one, Daniel?
Yeah, I have it on my computer
Okay.
too.
Okay.
Let's do it as 4.2 then. After the council referral, but before the information item. So, based on that minor change, do I have a motion to approve the agenda? David Lynch, second. Michael, all in favor? We are unanimous. Item 2, adoption of the minutes of the last meeting of January 20th, 2020. Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes from that meeting? Martin, second. David Lynch, all in favor? Yeah, we are unanimous. All right. We have no members of the public this evening. So moving right along, the council referral, which we have seen before for 720 Gardner Lane. This is the second time this has come to us. So you're going to give us a bit of an update on that?
Yeah.
Louise has to step up for this item. And hopefully it won't be too long, because we would be nice if you could be here so we could discuss the,
Yeah.
I mean, do we want to do the schedule first?
we could do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Reverse that, so you,
Let's-
then you could just go home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, do
I'm okay with that, actually.
Oh, gee.
We're sort of sitting here.
Sure, I have a conflict too.
Exactly. All right, well, let's talk about the, have you got a draft of a schedule for meetings? I guess the first thing are
Well, advance notice.
Mondays?
So Mondays we've been traditionally meeting the third Monday,
Correct,
and the second and fourth are council.
right.
So just sometimes it's a holiday, it helps do it Tuesday, and
Yeah.
then Parks and Trails and Ben Tucker both on Tuesdays.
Right.
So there, and then just, there's so many people here today, maybe a Wednesday is better.
I don't
And
know. How does
also
everyone
if you
feel
have
about
any 5
Monday,
o'clock.
Monday versus Wednesday for meeting?
I'd go for Wednesday.
Wednesday, David?
And that's the third Wednesday?
I guess the third Wednesday of the month.
That could be okay.
Generally, that seems, everyone seems to be
Okay.
okay with that. What about time of day? Is 7 o'clock, is that a good time for people generally? I know we made one, I think, attempt to meet at 5, sort of before dinner. I don't know what that has to do with the room scheduling is part of this too, but,
I think people at work may have a hard time.
Yeah, that's a bit of an issue sometimes when
Right.
off island.
yeah, trying to get back in time for something earlier. So we stay with 7 o'clock, but move it to the third Wednesday of the month.
Sure.
Okay.
Everyone okay with that idea?
So the next one would be on the 18th.
March 18th, next meeting?
I will be in Venice.
That's Saturday.
Oh, nice. Can I come with you?
Call in.
Yeah, I
I
don't think so.
Be sleeping.
Do you need a formal motion on that?
Let's do one.
Sure.
I will move that we schedule our meetings for the third Wednesday of the month, beginning at 7 p.m.
Second, Dennis, all in favor? We are then
Sorry, and we
unanimous.
usually say except in August and December. It's probably going to be Christmas Day in December and council's not sitting in August, so it's nice to
Right.
know that it out.
Yeah.
And that.
And then, do we want to amend that motion to remove December and August from the schedule?
Sure, that's
You're
a
okay
friendly
with that?
amendment, I'll accept
Friendly
it.
amendment, Michael, and Dennis,
Yeah.
you're good with that? All in favor of that amendment? We are unanimous then. Wednesday it is. All right.
Thanks for coming all the way out.
Thank you. We'll see you on Wednesday, the third Wednesday of March.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a short meeting for you.
Wow. Record breaking. You'll send something out to me about that, won't you?
I will.
Yeah. Stick it in our
Alright.
calendars.
Yeah.
Yeah, invite everyone. Great, well, then moving to item 4.1, which became 4.2. Back to Daniel about 720 Gardner Lane.
Sure, so this is a rezoning and an OCP amendment application that came to you before. And I just stuck, so this is, this lot in the center of the island, so it's just beyond Adams Road where it turns around Meadowbrook Corner. If you went right instead, you'd end up on this property. The property itself currently is zoned, this sort of pie-shaped area is zoned RR2, so rural residential 2, which I think is zoning here. Rural residential 2 and rural residential 3. And the whole thing is designated as rural residential in our official community plan.
Is it in the ALR?
It's not in the ALR. So the ALR actually comes right next to it, like you can see where these hatched lines are the ALR boundaries of the property, you know which side of it are. So the rezoning application was to rezone a 4-hectare portion of it to be rural commercial 2 retreat center to allow a retreat center to operate in this lower part of the lot. And the proposal that was made was to leave the RR3 portion unchanged, which would permit future subdivision to create 2 lots zoned RR3. So this came to council in September. Council at that point referred it out to various committees and directed staff to prepare a bylaw to make the changes. So you talked about it in October and supported it, and comments regarding number of staff accommodations and parking requirements. The Community Economic Development Committee talked about it, and they supported the application. The Parks and Trails and Greenways met, and they highlighted the need for protection on Bowen Brook riparian corridor and looking for dedication of land and a trail on the west side of the property, and to investigate environmentally sensitive forested areas before determining exactly where that dedication should be. So it came back to council, and we prepared bylaws and came to council December 9th, and at that meeting, council did not give first reading to the bylaws, and instead they referred it back to staff, specifically looking for additional trail or additional park dedication, and requirement for trail construction, to look at the parking requirements in the bylaw, specify covenant protection for Bowen Brook, and looking for a general site plan of proposed development from the applicant. So the applicant did some work on the proposal, and we went away and talked about it, came back to council with a revised proposal. So, and this came to council and received first reading at the last council meeting. So what is in the current bylaws is a 4-hectare retreat center, retreat center zoning, a 2-hectare park dedication, and then 2 1-hectare lots. And that would be placed in the RR3C zone, so allow them to be smaller, have a smaller average lot size. And so then what the bylaws would do, so bylaw 489 would essentially change the land use designations on these 2 portions to place this as park and make this retreat commercial. And the land use bylaw would mimic that in terms of placing this in park, placing this in this retreat center zone, and changing the designation of this middle rural residential part to allow for smaller average lot sizes.
How large are the lots?
1 hectare.
Oh, so that's the new lot size?
Yeah. So the land use bylaw 490, you go through it, essentially does 5 things. So it places the RR2 portion into the RCH, the retreat center zone. It amends the retreat center zone to have a regulation on the number of staff accommodations permitted. And it would link the maximum number of staff dwelling units to the number of guest bedrooms, so a ratio of 1 to 10 guest bedrooms, and include a definition for staff accommodation. It would place then a portion of the RR3 zone into a park zone, and the remainder would get placed in this RR3C zone variation, which allows the minimum average lot area to go from 2 hectares to 1 hectare. And so council at that meeting gave first reading to the bylaws, and so then I have the recommendations in your report for the APC for any comments on the 2 bylaws.
Can you remind me what retreat zoning allows, like, if,
Yeah.
or is it 40 rooms, and 40 guests?
So 20 guest bedrooms. I was thinking that too with staff accommodation, I think my slide is wrong in terms of, so retreat center allows 40 guests. It allows up to 20 guest bedrooms.
Okay, and so that would mean only,
Only 2 staff accommodations.
okay, yeah, that, because it suddenly got,
I know, I was like, that's not right, as I was
that's
reading it,
huge.
but,
Okay.
yeah, so this is the retreat center definition of what it means, and it is up to 20 guests, 40 guests, 20 guest bedrooms.
We have about 500 retreats on this island, it seems. Everyone is having a retreat.
6 or 7. You're
Yeah.
you're exaggerating.
I'm exaggerating.
Daniel, is there now a definition for staff accommodation?
Yes. I don't have it in the presentation, so just hang on.
Do these retreats pay taxes?
What taxes?
I mean,
Municipal.
nonprofits.
So there's, do they pay property tax? Or
Yeah.
do they pay?
Yeah.
Property tax?
Yeah.
But not, do they pay business licenses? They have to have business licenses?
Yeah, so then, I mean, currently the bed and breakfast has a business license to operate as a bed and breakfast, and the yoga dome that they have as well as licensed as a yoga place as a home occupation. Yeah, they would be, and I don't know a lot about it, but recently the provincial government has expanded like PST on bed and breakfast, so I'd imagine they're captured by that at the provincial level, and the municipality is considering implementing what's called the MRDT, which is the Municipal Regional District Tax, which is up to 3% tax on overnight accommodation, and they would be captured by that as well.
Will their taxes go up when they divide this land and designate these smaller residential properties?
Like it's based on the, I would imagine it would, because I would imagine by creating the subdivision, so that you have 3 lots instead of 1 lot, they would be valued more, and so you'd be paying more tax.
So have they actually done the subdivision yet, or?
No. So I mean, so the rezoning comes first to create the land use piece of it. I mean, and so then it's sort of a conversation, I think, with the council, maybe at the second reading in terms of timing of it all. So generally when we do a rezoning, we'll rezone it and we say, okay, now they have the ability to subdivide, but we don't say you have to subdivide. So I know looking at the map, there's places who rezoned, like there's a CD 17 off of Sunset, 17? There was a CD zone that was done that, you know, it's like, so half would be park and half would go from 1 lot. They could have 2 lots on this half of the property. They've never come back and subdivided, so it's like the zoning is there, but the lot just exists. And there's no, like, a time of rezoning, there's no trigger to say you have to subdivide.
Okay, just,
Yeah.
the concept of a single parcel having 2 separate zonings is just, never run across it before.
So, I mean, this lot currently has 2 different zones on it.
Okay.
It's-
But that's, I mean, before the subdivision, it's a single.
So, yeah, it's a single parcel.
But that
You're gonna
situation
require
becomes
that.
resolved through this process, correct?
If they
I
subdivide.
mean, yeah, so I think that's some of it is like, I've thought through this one that will probably, for council and for us, is that we would want to have something that says you have to create the park parcel within a set time frame of the rezoning going ahead. And that it's different than like some rezonings go ahead and there's like lots of lots that are getting created and stuff, so we know they're gonna wanna come for the park. Whereas this one, you know, the main goal of their rezoning is a retreat center. And the lots are sort of like, well, the zoning was there already to create 2 extra lots, and it's sort of,
Can you explain access to those 2 lots?
so they're showing access here through, so this is Buchanan Road,
Right,
comes up and comes to the corner, and actually Buchanan Road as a road continues the entire length of this.
so lot 2 would require an easement over lot 1 to
Yeah.
get to their.
Or, I mean, or potentially over the retreat center. So in a subdivision, you create 1 lot that is accessed by easement. And so they've shown it and they're coming this way. And so yeah, it would get by easement over lot 1.
At what point does that easement come into would that be part of the subdivision process?
Yeah.
Because of this firefighting access and various things that you consider.
So the retreat comes in that way too.
The retreat comes in off Gardner Lane
Yeah,
off this way.
oh, yeah, so, but they're showing another road.
Yeah, I mean, they're showing this but this is more like currently on the site, you come in and this is where the old house and the property used to be, and they're showing this is like their future development as well. So the road physically, like the driveway, the internal driveway comes up here. This is like an old logging road that physically runs across
so
here and
it's
then
there.
comes across to here. And that, like when we did the site visit, he said when the previous owners had it, Eddie would plow their road for them, but he would come in this way from Eddie's pit and across the property. So it's like drivable. He would physically drive across and then come down to plow
Oh, really?
the internal driveway.
Sorry, David?
Yeah, I was going to give some council feedback. And so if you look on page 7 of 7, there's 3 bullets, 3 comments. Within the first two bullets, and the comments are mostly from me, actually. And so, but I should say that council did do, all council members, I think, did a site visit. And we were all very impressed with the way they were doing the development on the, in their yoga areas, really nicely done. So everybody was pretty pleased about that, and generally pleased about the whole approach. But the point that I raised was why thinking of the principles of conservation development, why not have the 2 lots, instead of having a 1 hectare lot, have them a 1 acre lot or half a hectare lot, have them both right here. You don't then need to build this other road, and you could have a larger park area and be protecting more forest. Instead of having have an additional road and additional tree cutting and so on, why not cluster it? So that's what the comments, increasing parkland dedication to around 50% by clustering those 2 properties.
So if I understand what you're proposing, David, lot 1 would become a half hectare,
Yeah,
and lot 2 would become 1.5 hectares, but would become park and join a park.
it would be, so this would be divided in 2, so you have 2 half
2 half hectare
in here,
properties, I
and
see,
then this becomes
more park.
more park, or some version of that.
So I don't know the topography.
And yeah, looking at the topography,
It
you
looks
see a
like there's a
contour line
crown
right
in the
here, you've
center.
got a crown right here, so,
Right.
I made these comments without looking at the topography, so obviously the topography would have to be looked at.
Yeah, because it may not be possible to develop half of that property or 2 halves of that property clustered in some fashion.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because you could actually put fingers of that park, that would connect into the retreat center so that they would have access as opposed to
From
be
there,
blocked off
then.
and stuff.
That's a good point.
And I think that's a good way to deal with it. They still get the same number of lots. And the developed area will be surrounded by parkland. And that's just what the policy says. Yeah, trying to.
What about a slightly different approach to that, where the overall residential parcel area is reduced, enabling the park to meet the property line of the retreat center, but perhaps those 2 lots are they're more than the single hectare? I'm trying to understand what our goal is here. I understand some of the goals of clustering housing and so on. And Dennis's point, I think, is a good one, that in effect, these 2 residential properties cut the retreat center off from the park area. Dave?
If I've got this right, the bottom of your drawing there, is that about the bottom of the hill going up to the pit? Does it just go from there up? It's quite steep.
It's pretty steep, but
And that land as a park, I haven't been up to Eddie's area, that drops off and is quite steep in there. It's not, it would be a rough hike and what have you, or very difficult to build in that area. Even lot 2, as I remember, is quite steep.
So I know that the contours don't show up very well on this, but essentially, this is like a lower portion. This is essentially where the hill goes across in this, it's quite a dramatic grade change from down here to up here. This
Those
is
are
roughly
5 meter
the bench
contours?
area.
So are this 5 meter contours?
I'm not actually sure, so this is from the applicant.
Uh-huh.
And I know I've made them from our mapping as well. And then in here, there's roughly one, like knoll that's in here, and there's one that runs across this way.
Yeah.
Whereas there's like a natural sort of path that's come in this way and goes across, and then, so that when the Parks and Trails were looking, they wanted this connection to get to the Crown Line, essentially this corner you'd get to Crown Line, to the Cross Island Trail, and that was the desire for the park and trail was essentially that connection route. Where this property starts essentially is the entrance to Eddie's Pit, so you've gone down Buchanan, you come back up, and it's roughly where the gate is. To Eddie's property is roughly right in here. So it's steep to get up to here for sure.
I don't know if it's immediately relevant to planning, but do you think they intend ultimately to sell lots 1 and 2?
Whenever I've talked to them, it's like not their immediate goal, and that's been some of their challenge, I think, working through, okay, how do we shrink these lots, given that they haven't really planned them. And they go, okay, well, I think, so after the first time it came to council and back, that's when they had, so this was then done by an architect looking at the overall layout, trying to figure out, okay, where are the building sites and where would it go? But so they're sort of hesitant through it all, knowing, okay, well, that's like our fallback plan. Like if the business isn't going well, at least we know we have 2 lots we can sell in the future as like a emergency measure or something for it. But they haven't done the detailed planning. So it's different than like when a developer comes and they want to say, okay, I'm gonna have 5 lots they want to sell. They've like staked them out. They're like, this is where I'm gonna sell them, and they sort of work through it all.
I just wonder, I think Dennis's point about making the park contiguous to the retreat,
Or at least have an access through it. I don't, there's lots of people that want to have bigger lots. I would rather have a bigger lot, and I know it's all very nice to have this conservancy, but, it's not what everyone wants, conservation stuff, so. But I can see that it would be valuable to have access, which they will until they subdivide, but they can also, when they subdivide, they would probably want to allow access somehow from the retreat to the little bit of park and then up to the Crown Land. So.
But they haven't given themselves that option.
Well, no, but
they could at
they could
subdivision.
at subdivision. They could delegate a trail.
Right.
An easement across.
Yeah, an easement, which would make a lot of sense for them, and
they still retain the 2 big properties.
yeah.
It could be approved with using the conservation district sort of guidelines, I guess. I'm concerned about just giving an easement for a trail, because that's not permanent. And the idea of preserving some of these areas. A lot of people buy beautifully treed lots and then proceed to mow down every tree on the property and plant grass and stuff.
Good on them, good on them. Well, I'm a farmer, it is, I think that's good. And I think that this island doesn't have enough, I don't know if that land's worth anything for farming, but hey, great. If people want to farm, I think that's a fantastic thing.
I don't think they're farming.
But anyway, if it's an easement or not, it really doesn't matter if there's sheets there. No one's gonna have if it's an easement between the lots, the only one that's gonna be hampered by it is the retreat. If it goes away, it's not gonna be hampering, because where is anyone else gonna trail? Right into the retreat?
Right, like the connection between would never be a public.
No.
It's not a public trail in terms of to the retreat center.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. That they would continue to own the park, it would continue to be private land, but it would be a park, and the zoning would prevent them from doing anything. I don't know, does park zoning, for example, prevent you from cutting down trees? And planting grass.
Or what, they would be dedicating that park, wouldn't they? The big park.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess my point was, like, we've done rezonings where then the park is dedicated at time of subdivision. So it's like, you know, then we get them when they subdivide it, so.
Has there been any conversation about what happens with the park plan?
I mean, I think not so much around timing, because more of our focus has been how much of it.
Right.
But so then what I've thought is to bring council for secondary is discussion about, okay, and then probably we want some sort of covenant that says, okay, then you'll do the park dedication within a set timeline of the rezoning.
This park is gonna remain, owned by the retreat, right? The Muni doesn't wanna own it.
No, so the Muni would own it.
Oh, it
Yes,
does.
the
I thought they
Muni
didn't
would
want a whole bunch more land to maintain.
Well,
Be a
I
private
think at
park.
different times, people have different opinions on how much land these dollars should own or not. But essentially, our manager of parks, Savani, her take was that, well, it'll be a natural park. It'll be
Yeah.
a park, but it's not proposed to have infrastructure beyond the trail construction, to have infrastructure that will require maintenance and ongoing operation.
Yeah, I mean, I think municipality has to do some work on differentiating recreational parks from parks that are in place to preserve the natural environment.
Yeah.
You can still walk in at Norris to that, but the main idea is just that the natural environment is left unchanged.
But
So,
with that park, you know, Buchanan Road going up on the west side, and Eddie's Pit and all the business above it.
So Eddie's
So-
Pit is right here, Buchanan Road, as on the
Stops there.
ground function stops here. But we continue to have a road right of way that runs essentially between Eddie's Pit and this property
Right.
at a half width. It's very bizarre, but it's there on paper, but as a practical matter, Buchanan Road ends here, and this is where you then take the driveway.
And
onto
above
Eddie's
it,
property. And above it, so from this corner, above it this way is Crown Land, and above it this way is a private 40-acre parcel. That's basically the top of Harding Road.
so this is gonna basically be a little private park. I mean, basically.
Privately owned
So I mean,
until subdivision.
well, yeah, but in terms of its use, the Parks and Trails saw it as, so we have a park that runs to the south of here, that's Mike Lord with the trail across it. And they
Right.
saw that as a route that is getting people to the Crown Land. That was some of its function
Ah.
for them, was to get people onto the Cross Island Trail, and onto Crown Land.
because the Cross Island Trail is just,
It's just up
there,
here.
just up there.
Yeah.
Seem to be a number of variables here that are kind of in flux. There's no, this process does not require the proponent to move forward with the rezoning. There's,
Subdivision.
with subdivision.
Yeah.
They simply rezone parcels which are identified according to this plan. They retain ownership of the 4 parcels, whatever they are. And it could stay that way in perpetuity until such time they decide that they want to sell those 2 parcels or do something else with them. Is that correct? Or is there some
I mean,
kind of
that
time
can
frame on
be
this?
correct, but it's fully within council ability to say, well, there's a covenant that that park gets dedicated within a set time frame.
Right.
And like I said, so historically on Bowen, we haven't done that. But generally it's because it's thought, well, they're gonna get more lots of it. In this case, the applicant is not gaining any more additional lots as a result of it, so there's no almost incentive to subdivide initially that they didn't have. They could now subdivide into 3 lots.
Right.
And at the end of the zone, they'll be able to subdivide into 3 lots as it's proposed. There's not that immediate incentive, so maybe it makes sense to have some trigger on it that says, okay, but the park is gonna be dedicated to this
Right.
town at some point.
And it's sort of equally interesting, at least to me, that there doesn't seem to be any thought given, no thought seems to have been given to the economic viability of these 2 parcels or a desire to sell them or do something with them. So, and hand in hand with that is the lack of access between the retreat center and the park dedication. And it just kind of doesn't feel quite like it's been
So I mean, from,
thought through
yeah.
all the way or something.
from the applicant's point of view, the application was for the retreat center zoning portion of it,
Right,
and to leave the remainder unchanged. So they hadn't thought at all about the balance of the property. They were
Got it.
saying, we wanna do a retreat center on Bowen, this is what we wanna do.
right,
And then it came up through saying, well, you know, the municipality wants you to dedicate some of it as park.
uh-huh,
So then they have to think through, okay, what would we do with the remainder, and how much are we willing to say, okay, yes, you know, how much could be park dedication that they're comfortable with? Before it starts to
I'm
impact.
puzzled that they don't want the, what's now lot 1 and 2 is RR2 anyway, just for RC2, just for expansion or?
under RC2, can they have a single family dwelling?
Yes, these single, I think it was in that definition.
And
You have
can
a-
they have a secondary suite detached?
I don't think so.
So that would be the difference. The RR3 would allow them to have a single family dwelling and a detached secondary suite,
Oh, okay. So maybe
where
that's-
the RC2 zoning would be different, but is there anything that ties the 40 in-suite, in-residence guests to property size? Or could you have a retreat center on my lot in Deep Bay?
So the zone has a 4 hectare minimum
Ah.
lot size.
Okay, so in fact, those two parcels would be too small to.
Yeah, so like, you know, one option that council brought up was, well, what if there's just, this was all just the RC2
Yeah,
parcel?
that's what I was wondering.
Right, so essentially take away the option to create the 2 additional lots.
Right.
And just make it all retreat center.
Right,
But then they wouldn't get any additional rooms, or would they?
No, then they would have the same, like, they'd still be at the 20 cabins and the 40 guests would still be
they'd have
the
a
same.
6 hectare site rather than a 4 hectare
Yeah.
site, but they would have the
With
same
no
program.
build, yeah,
Yeah.
no upgrading.
Those lots eventually would probably bring them in, what, $500,000 extra by the subdivision?
Yeah, depending how much servicing costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it certainly puts a potential of future income for the retreat by having it subdivided. If you don't subdivide it at all and leave it with the park, they're definitely cut back on their potential income from the land.
Yeah, right, it just seems like the tail is wagging the dog a little bit because you need a minimum of 4 hectares, right, for the retreat zoning. So they said, well, here's the 4 hectares.
Right.
What do they want to do with the rest? I wonder if they really have thought about what they want to do with the rest. But it does make sense for them not to include it in the retreat if they maxed out already on that.
As they would have the potential to sell those.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand that, that's where it's leading.
Right.
Subject to closure to the park, which I suppose they could sell before it's dedicated. Somebody wants to own one.
So, I mean, so,
On a park.
I mean, so at the very least, it would be like, to create the park lot, it would be dedicated at that point, right? And so it's not, like any like at the very least, we would be having a condition, like what we, you know, that at the time of subdivision, that's when you dedicate the park. It's like, more the difference in this is like, okay, then do we just put a trigger on it, so you have to do it within a set timeline, you have to dedicate the park.
I think that, I think that once, if they go through any subdivision, they might as well subdivide that whole area, I would think. And so,
I mean, so when I talked to the approving officer about, yeah, how would that work? Because we said, you have to do the park, you know, more requirements. And she said, well, like one option is you'd create the park, you'd create the retreat center, and you'd create a remainder parcel in the middle that just has like a no build covenant on it. That says, okay, to build and develop, you have to do the servicing, improve the servicing before you can, like, actually have development options on it.
But you'd have to go back to land titles and establish the subdivision. for that
Yeah,
area, right?
and do it again, like, and then you
Yeah.
come back
So
and create
two-
them. But with the idea being like, from the applicant's point of view, they say, you know, they've established their business, but that's essentially where their capital's gone into. So for them to subdivide and create the 2 lots, they wouldn't want to have to do, you know, they're not prepared at this point to say, yes, and we'll spend the money to like prove that there's water and prove the access
Right.
and do all the things you have to do to subdivide.
Well, one of the comments was to increase the parkland dedication to 50%, and that would more or less turn lot 1 and lot 2 totally into park, right?
It certainly would.
Or to shrink, I mean, the other option
It
for
seems a little
council is
excessive to me.
like, we can amend the retreat center zoning, like the council, you know, that's the direction. We could say, okay, well, retreat centers maybe can take place on a 3-hectare parcel, right? And then move the lots over a bit. I mean, it doesn't, like, I know when they were planning the lot 1 and lot 2, I mean, they started essentially from identifying, like, what are the prime like, flat building site areas on the lot. And there are these two, so if you said, okay, well, we'll shrink the retreat center, we'll move the lots over, this is essentially the cliff, so it's not like you would move it over and say, okay, well, we'll build one lot here on this side of the cliff, and, you know.
Well, I don't think it's like 2 more lots on the island is not a big deal. The park is contiguous to Crown Lounge, so it's really actually a huge park. And, is there like, it's not like there's gonna be scalped lands everywhere and 50 houses.
Is it actually contiguous?
It meets at a point.
Yes, but there's no actual pathway between that and the Crown Land, there's private property on one side, on both sides.
I thought you said that there was a,
Yeah, so this is Crown here, and there's a municipal right-of-way that comes up, that's,
So you could, through the municipal right-of-way.
so you would go here, you could go through to get up,
Right.
like, in terms of. So there's a point, I don't think there's a trail there now, like, but it, you know, but it.
can your right of way, can it be, made into a trail, or is it just a cliff?
I mean, the Parks Trails looked at it because they were kind of thinking, okay, well, do we, you know, essentially almost do we need the trail dedication or could we just put it on the road right of way? I mean, the advantage one of being is you can go around some of the, like you can play with the topography better. Like,
Yeah.
cause this is quite steep, so you have room to get, you know, at an angle or something, you're better. And they thought it's much nicer being this side of this hump. And
Yeah,
much
so-
nicer being further from
yeah.
Eddie's Pit. It's
But then
much
they can
nicer.
get up into
But
the
they have
park,
to get back over.
into
Yeah.
Crown Lounge
Yeah.
on the corner there.
I can just speak to Michael's comment about the 50%, half the land is a park. I mean, that sort of came from discussions around conservation development and so on. So there was not a discussion, or I don't remember anyone saying, oh, it has to be exactly 50%, let's squash that retreat, or, you know,
Yeah,
it was more,
okay.
let's move more towards getting about half of the land as a park, as a principle, that's all.
Well, I think if we apply that to the 2 residential lots, that you take 50% of that, which allows you to make those connective open spaces and fulfills that objective. So, you know, I think we should, I like the plan. I think it works, seems to work pretty well for that land. And the only thing is actually getting it subdivided. And when somebody is dedicating that much parkland, should they not get a break on the costs of subdividing and stuff? I would like to see it all subdivided at once. I mean, those lots could be, right now, just basically off the grid. They're large enough to deal with everything except for power. And I'm sure there's power on both of those roads, adjacent roads.
Well, the
Do
building
you
sites
need
are,
a 10-acre site if there's no water? 10 makes 10
I
acres.
mean, I think you have to prove potable water at time of subdivision.
Right.
And same with, you know, there's a number of things just in subdividing that the approving officer considers before approving lots.
Right.
So some of it would probably be things like geotechnical assessments. Some of it is just getting access, and yeah. So it's not like the municipal cost of it, like it's not like the municipal fee is the owner's part. It's us saying like, okay, where's the water coming from? And for them to then go and drill the wells and
Right.
whatever, and prove that like the septic field will work on the site. And so get a septic engineer out to go look at it.
And that needs to be done prior to
Subdivision.
subdivision.
Prior to subdivision to create the actual building lots. So like I said, when I talked to her, she said, well, we can do, you know, it's for, you do park dedication, you do a remainder lot with a no build that says, okay, before you want to actually then make them, you have to do the work and you can
Right.
build on it now. And then you create this one. Or, I mean, or it's just the park dedication.
But there
and
are
a
some
remainder.
kind of simplistic, like if it's less than 5 acres, you have to have water and, you have to prove water and septic, and these would be
Under the, yeah.
a little bit, you're right in that range.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like the way to go then, create the retreat and create the park. And so that for 1 acre lot, or 1 hectare lot, to be developed as a conservation.
I mean,
I take it
seems
the
like-
building sites are just conceptual at this point, they're
Yeah.
not committed to it, and they're not,
No.
Yeah.
we're not requiring that they, so, yeah, I mean, that would be for another day.
I mean,
Once
in
they
terms
have
of-
the subdivision,
yeah.
what they do with the land and how they develop it to build on it.
I mean, I think in terms of, the municipal's interest, it's just like, do we want to require the park to be done at
Now
a
or
certain
later.
time, right? In terms of them timing the rest of their development, it seems like maybe a stretch for us to say, well, we're really concerned when you build the house on this lot or not.
I
So,
don't think,
so there's 3 parts to the proposal, and there's 3 different questions here. There seems to be general consensus that everyone's happy with the retreat center, the development, what's proposed, the amendments to the OCP, the rezoning, all of that. The park dedication seems to be a little bit of a gray area. I'm hearing council would like to have 50% of this property roughly dedicated as park, which means that there would be no other parcels. There would be the retreat center and there would be park. And then there's a third option where there is some, either this or some variation on a residentially zoned parcel or 2 parcels, which would be owned by the owners of the retreat center for future sale. Maybe we need to check the boxes and take things off the table or something,
Yeah.
because I think this feels like a conversation could, and I'm not quite clear, Daniel, from your presentation, what you're seeking from the APC and what council is seeking from the APC.
So council gave first reading to the bylaws
Yes.
that are in the report. Council referred to the APC for comments, essentially looking for support for the bylaws or for non-support or for, additional comments.
Right. Okay.
Is there a trail down along the waterway on the right?
Down here at the bottom?
This
Yeah.
is showing the creek. There is a trail, municipal trail that comes out here and that comes along and comes out about here.
Okay.
It's called Mike's Log.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice area.
Yeah.
There's a creek, along the creek. Is that must be municipal park, or at least, so
Yeah.
somebody's
Yes.
put picnic tables and things like
It's a
that there,
municipal park.
and the trail is maintained, yeah. Okay, so, sorry, Drew, you had 3 questions that you
Yeah,
had
so
comments on?
just the first question, part of the application has to do with the zoning of the retreat center and the dedication of the amount of property with it, is that correct?
I mean, in essence, like this is what in terms of what the bylaws do.
Okay,
The bylaws, like the OCP, changes the land use designation to allow the retreat center and changes this land use designation for the park.
right, and the swath through the middle is
Would-
already,
yeah.
already,
In the OCP would just remain unchanged.
Right.
It allows 1 hectare lot sizes, and that's what is proposed, and no changes to the OCP.
okay. So the only real question for the APC regarding this,
Yeah.
if I understand it correctly, since there's no conversation about the area, the 4 hectares for the retreat center, is whether the dedication, allocation of the 2 hectares for park is sufficient and this general sort of consensus, that's a,
I think that's enough park, but I think we also ought to talk about future development of the land in between to be, not reduce the number of lots allowable, but to develop that as a conservation area where 50%, approximately 50% of each lot will become dedicated park, and link the park to the center.
so, Dennis, you said earlier that you felt that an easement was not a permanent solution. I mean, the easement can be written in such a way that both parties have to agree to removal of it. So if it became, if the easement is also in favor of the municipality would have to waive their wish to have that easement in order for it to go away. But I mean, the other way to do it would be to physically have a finger of that, connect the two parcels. And then have an easement across that to get to lot 2.
Yeah. Well, I would like to give them a maximum amount of flexibility in how they use those parcels. And, you know, if they're gonna have to look at topo and availability of water and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
So, and they're not, I mean, that's a big job, and they're not gonna want to do that now. I'm just, the conservation district policies talk about dedication of the open space to the municipality or a third organization that would be responsible for maintenance and that sort of thing. And probably, since we, as far as I know, we haven't really set on a third-party organization that would maintain parks and stuff. It should be dedicated to this municipality.
So
Both the
let's,
park.
let's go back to the council comment about 50% dedication of park. David, is there anything to say about that? Was there a lot of, you said there was no discussion?
There was some discussion. Several people liked the idea of 50% just as a principle, but they weren't actually then looking at moving lines around or saying how it would work, and there was certainly no discussion that I heard of making the retreat smaller or ditching those two lots.
Right.
So in other words, it would be finding some way to increase the size of the park and reduce the size of the two lots, but not change the general structure of the retreat.
But they can't reduce the size of the retreat, right? Because they wouldn't be meeting the zoning.
Correct.
And it strikes me when I think of other developments on the island, 50% park is,
Huge.
yeah, we don't have that anywhere else.
Well, I think that's a bit,
Evergreen was done 50%, 50%, no, basically most of John Reed's things were 50%.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But,
All of them.
I mean, I would say the difference in those two is that, you know, in return for 50% dedication,
Yeah.
he got significantly more units than he
Density,
had.
right?
Yeah.
On the
Right.
dedicated park.
So in this case, you know, at a certain point, the applicant can say, okay, I'll just run a bed and breakfast, and I'll have 2 5-acre lots on the backside and no park dedication.
Right.
I tell you what I'm thinking is that the 2-hectare park is enough, but in the context that the B area, anyway, I think it is lot 1 or lot 2, be developed in accordance with conservation development principles, which would include preservation of some natural area, which is park-like.
Yeah, I think that would meet the
And that
needs.
doesn't preclude the possibility that it's actually 2 lots and 2 separate owners. They simply follow those guidelines
Exactly.
in terms of development.
Yeah.
Yeah, I concur. I think that's kind of where we want to be going with this. Is anyone else looking for more park?
no.
Okay, so we can take, so I believe that, you know, given the parcel size, 25% of park, and they're not really, you know, the benefit to them in giving that over as park is relatively limited. So those two things seem to be, I would like to see some kind of connection, whether it's a legal connection through easement or some other kind of connection between the retreat center and the park.
Yeah, I think that'd be wise, and leave it up to them to decide how to do it.
Yes.
I mean, one of the points to be made is that the park is contiguous with the retreat center, not a subdivision with 10 houses or,
Right,
so.
exactly.
Well, they,
I have, just to add to that, I have, over the past 10, 15 years, done a lot of work with the Brew Creek Center up towards Whistler. And that's a 13-acre now, 19-acre facility. The fact that it is surrounded in forest is what makes it a great retreat center. And the people who use the retreat go well beyond the boundaries of the retreat center onto their crown land and use it, and it's a huge amenity. So if it were somehow legally cut off the retreat center from the park, I think that would be a great shame.
Well, the only people that would have a problem with it are the retreat center. Like, that's the only
I
people
know,
that are gonna lose
it's
so
a
much, so
little
they aren't gonna
themselves in
do
the
it.
foot.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they thought themselves through, I think that's.
No, but they will by then and realize, oh, that's where all our people go walking.
Yeah.
well,
They gotta do their walking meditation somewhere, right?
Right. So is the best approach, Daniel, and I think maybe I'm asking you, at this point, to propose doing nothing with the lot 1, lot 2, or the area for now?
I mean, that's what I'm hearing, so I guess you would just say that the ATC support, you know, the bylaw 498 and 499.
Yes. With
And you should
recommendations to make a connection between the
Yeah,
retreat center
and
and the
then-
park,
yeah.
to maintain one in perpetuity. And I guess then the other thing is that future development of that band through the middle conforms to
conservation district.
But you know what we're doing is, you're going to make a connection between the park and the retreat solely for the use of the retreat people.
Correct.
Nobody else is gonna go there.
No?
So it's to the benefit of the retreat people to put that into place when they go for the subdivision.
Yeah.
Others have access to the parcel as well, they just don't have it through the retreat center.
Well,
But it maintains that connection for retreat
for the retreat people.
people, yes.
But the retreat people own that land, so if
Yeah.
they can let,
For now, anyway.
yeah, so they can let the retreat users use that land in any way they want. I mean, walking into the park and out of the park and all that sort of thing.
And the dedication of the parkland to Bowen is just for green space, really, isn't it? It's not gonna,
That's-
people aren't gonna walk through it or camp on it or do
The
anything.
terrain, I think, is perhaps a little,
Hmm.
I mean, so the proposal is for a trail to
Yeah.
go
Trails
across
of the
it.
crown land.
Yeah,
right.
From where to where?
from the top of Buchanan through to get through to the crown.
Right, just a matter of finding a reasonable access
Yeah,
rather than going straight up
yeah.
there. Right.
So I
it's-
just changed, provide comments to support, and then with the recommendation that the connection is made between the retreat center and the park dedication.
I think we need to be maybe a little bit, provide a little more guidance on that. Either a physical or legal,
The physical
Connection.
and legal connection.
or,
At time of subdivision.
right, so it could be an easement across the other property of a future date. So you have physical or legal connection be maintained in perpetuity.
I was gonna say, you put irrevocable in there somewhere.
In perpetuity between
Perpetuity does it.
the retreat center
Actually, I
parcel.
have it on the screen, then I can take over.
Oh, yeah.
So what are the typos? I'm curious about that. Missing,
Yeah, I know. I
missing a word, not or something.
I wonder if that's the 20, the,
Pardon?
Is yours down?
It's not.
No, this is not, I'm gonna put it into a
So
common
the-
drive to
Oh, I
get
don't
it
know what
shown.
Oh, I see.
So the connection would be considered as park. Is that correct?
Correct,
Or-
yes.
Yeah.
And it's just flexible left to them to decide exactly where.
Yeah, how they do it,
Exactly.
right? Easement
Well,
or
why,
subdivision.
why don't we just, since they own the land now, and they'll have to subdivide it in the future to create the two
In
lots.
perpetuity,
uh,
that a physical or legal connection be made,
Or maintain.
made between retreat, yeah, so between the retreat center and the park dedication, to be maintained in perpetuity or something like
I think you want to say physical and legal connection rather than both.
that.
Because
Yeah,
otherwise it
I-
means that the lawyers are allowed in, but no one else.
Yeah. We don't want that.
Should I do it?
The need for connection
Uh,
be maintained.
I,
Oh. Yeah, because it may not be between the two lots, it may be at the top of the property, it may be
Yeah,
at the
sure.
bottom, it doesn't make any
Let them
difference.
work out what works for them.
There, it's only benefiting them, so
Right,
what, where it is.
Exactly.
They could build a bridge.
well,
They
I,
could.
I would kind of like to refer to the conservation development
Yeah, that's, I think, the
principles.
second recommendation, the future development on the RR3 parcel. 3C, is it?
Is that the lot 1 and 2?
Be, yeah,
Yeah.
be developed according to conservation district principles, where approximately 50% of land would be dedicated as park and include a connection.
Why don't we say natural area rather than park? Because
Okay, natural area, sure.
they may not
Sure.
choose
Okay.
to do a park, but there are lots of ways.
Is
to
this
consider
suggesting
natural
that
area.
they divide those two lots, you want to give up 50% of them as well as the park? Ben?
Well, I certainly hope not.
Yeah, which would connect the two. I mean, that's sort of, what that is that everybody, you know, we talked about that when we developed the conservation district principles. You actually increase the values of a home when they are surrounded by green lands.
Well,
as
some people
opposed
think
to-
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are lots of areas on the island that.
But we
can
can't
be
ask them to,
developed.
force them to do a park on the
Yeah,
two.
well, that's why
It's
I
not
changed
a
it
park.
to natural area.
So it's
because
not a
what-
park, it's just an undeveloped area.
Yeah.
There are
where
no
they just-
buildings on it. And that's part of, that's part of this broader, I know this kind of sticks with you, Kirsten.
It
but-
really sticks with me.
But there's a goal here, an overarching goal, which is probably 4 or 5 years down the road, of having some guiding principles for development generally on Bowen. And they would include something like the conservation development principles.
Yeah.
And I don't know this parcel that well, I've just seen it from the road, but one of the things that I know Evergreen quite well because I walk my dog through there and horse that, but what John Reed has done, I mean, it sounds noble that he's given half to park, but if you look at what he's given, there's no way you could build a house there.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's a rocky outcrop or
He
so-
goes through and he looks for anything that's
and
over
that's
10% gradient and says, well,
Yeah,
I
well, so that's what I'm
develop.
hoping is that when people look at lots, they start off by working out what they can't use anyway to
Right.
develop, so that becomes a natural area.
sure.
And-
But it's not available to every man and their dog to walk on. It's still
No,
private
the idea is
property.
preservation rather than recreation.
And private,
Yeah, in this case, yeah.
Oh, sure. Well, you
Yeah.
have to acknowledge that they own
yeah, because they're not gonna be
it.
wanting
You
to
like
pay.
that one, Kirsten? You'd go with that one, wouldn't you?
So does the word dedicated imply that they're handing over ownership?
I don't think
Is that what you-
No, they just
I-
have to agree not to,
It just means set aside.
Dedicated, not being built.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything, I don't think, in law.
So this park dedication has nothing to do with the ownership, that's just,
No.
But that's something different. Yeah.
yeah, that is the park dedication.
so it gets capital.
Okay, so do you need is that a motion there, Drew?
I do.
I agree with it, so I'll move it.
All right. That sounds good. So Michael, do we have a second? Dennis?
Yep.
Any further discussion on this?
Well, I'm happy, I think dedicated as natural area is a bit aggressive.
Maintained?
Well,
Developed according to
Set aside.
principles.
We have that one there.
yeah, I don't know, I guess I'm not,
I
I'm
agree
not
with
that
you.
excited, I'm not very keen on the conservation requirement anyway, so I'm really happy with the first part of it, but I'm not so happy.
Actually, you do have a good point about dedicated, because it has a specific legal meaning in the context of, I like David said, set aside, or preserved, be preserved, because that's the point of it.
Uh,
But if I own one of those lots, and decide to build on it, does that mean I can't take the trees down on any part of it, or just some
Well,
part?
you know, the lot where my house is, I'm not allowed to take down a tree outside what they call the building envelope, which is about 1/5 of the lot. It's just, that was the way the whole subdivision was designed, and it's not unusual for the island. Well, I'm allowed to take down trees that are less than 9 centimeters across. I don't know, there are some very technical rules, yeah.
And that's
I think it's important to understand that there are guidelines, and there may be good reasons to follow them precisely, and there may be good reasons not to follow them precisely, which may have to do with topography and where your water's coming from, and where you need to put your septic, and a whole bunch of other things, which we can't address on this parcel right now. It's a guideline, and that's kind of where the guideline is trying to, I would say, rather than preserve, I'd say maintain 50% of the land without development.
So I just looked up dedication. So here, according to this definition, dedication of real estate is a donation of real property to a government for public purpose.
Yes.
That's why we need to put out
That's
of there.
right.
Some suggesting maintained as natural space,
I like preserve, because that's,
then there's some kind of sense of it being looked after as well, or,
well, preserve gives a sense of perpetuity again.
right, okay.
And maintain, that actually imposes an obligation
Pruning?
on the owner to, get the invasives out or things like that. I just,
Which we, which we probably want to see. Preserve works for me.
okay.
So
So,
where does this go then? Does this go into the bylaw or just into your
I
files?
see this being a covenant, I guess, or a condition of rezoning, and then at time of subdivision, that's when then it would get worked out in detail, whether it be like King River Bay, where it's like a building area, or we've got other ones where there's just covenanted areas of the lot. And sort of, through the subdivision, when they actually have to figure out, okay, where's the well gonna go, and where's the building site gonna go, and where exactly is the road coming in. That's when you're better able to then look at the map and say, okay, this is the natural area as well in that same.
Well, you know, if I'm the owners and I'm applying for subdivision, I put a building envelope in there so that the adjacent residents would not interfere with my property. So I wouldn't let them put it right on, say, the property line with the retreat center. And you can control it.
Depending where exactly the property is, the top,
The zoning
like the retreat center wants the trees
Yeah,
at
the
the top
setbacks
that
and so
we're
on,
looking at.
yeah.
yeah, the RR3 zone, I think, is 25 feet. Well, no, it's an internal property line. At any rate.
But it has approximately, Christine. It says approximately,
Yes, it does say approximately.
flexibility there.
Do these two recommendations cover your needs,
Yeah.
Daniel? Okay. So let's move back then to the motion.
I'll move that then.
All right.
That's,
So Michael's moving that with a second. Dennis does one. No, he's going to second.
Yeah.
He's still seconding. Any further discussion?
Well, the only thing I'll say is I'm uncomfortable with the requirement of the 50%, at least it says approximately, but if you can put me on record as I really am not keen on all of this forcing trees on people.
well, would you like there to be two separate motions so that you
I
can
would
vote
rather,
against the
yeah,
second one?
I'd rather have
Okay,
it.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Respect the democratic process.
Sure. So
Okay.
let's begin then with the first. And
I'll move it again.
all right.
Yeah, I'll second it.
And Dennis seconds. And all in favor? We are unanimous. And then as as to the second recommendation regarding the future development of the RR3C zone parcels. Or parcel. That it be developed according to, this is a recommendation, not a requirement. A recommendation would be developed according to conservation development principles where approximately 50% of land is preserved as natural space. Do I have a motion?
Move that again, just
Okay,
for
Michael,
consistency.
Second. Dennis, second. All in favor? We are in favor, with the exception of
Yes.
Christie. It's carried.
Do you usually record the who opposed? or just-
Yep.
Oh, wow.
That's usually Allison.
I will abstain on that.
Oh,
Sorry, David,
Yeah, David did.
that's going to be in the affirmative if you're abstaining.
Pardon?
An abstention is a vote in the affirmative.
Oh, then I think I'd vote against it.
Okay.
good. Thank you all. Moving on. There's an information item. 2019 Island Plan. Who's got the info?
That's just there. It's a standing item.
It's just,
Oh.
Did you guys see did you guys see the survey last time? Oh, there were so many information items last time. So the last one, the Ireland survey was on there, it's just recommended to check it out and participate next year. Yeah. We didn't go there.
all right. Then I think we've come to the end of what we could possibly do.
Wow.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn from
David,
Michael.
you need to,
Pardon?
motion to adjourn.
I move we Sorry. It's so early.
Sorry, yeah, I know, David, it's so early, it's kind of.
So excited.
Daniel was saying earlier he wanted to go till 11 or 11:30.
Yeah, I know, but I'm disappointed.
So disappointed. Steph, are you here every night? This week, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Not
But
always.
not Friday.
No.
Time and a half.
No, but I would like to